We get a call from our land. He's panicked, he's scared. He said, "What's going on? There are armed soldiers in your house. They're looking for you. They were looking everywhere." I told them you left. I don't know where you went, but what is happening? When you're living in a cell with 60 other women, you have no privacy. It's just one single bathroom. You don't have a comfortable place to sleep by multiple Chinese men in a single day. These women get pregnant by these Chinese soldiers. And it's horrifying having to carry your enemy's child. So these are children whose parents are imprisoned. They give them a Chinese name. So they grow up with Chinese ideology, Chinese beliefs, and Chinese culture. Men and women are given injections. We don't know what they are. Majority of them pass away really soon. I've seen my mom cry herself to sleep a lot of nights because she fears one day she might have to get the news of her mother passing away. And one day she cried to me and she said, "There's so much I wanted to tell my mom. There's..." My grandma, of course I love her, but she's my grandma. She did actually once get the chance to come here. She wants to die and be buried in her homeland. So she didn't come. It's unimaginable. I mean,
Assalamu Alaikum, Sister Sekine. Welcome to Eternal Passenger. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
Sister Sekine, can you tell us briefly about your life?
Sure. So my name is Sakina. I'm 22 years old. I'm currently a second-year psychology student here in Istanbul. I was born in Egypt, but we moved to East Turkistan when I was a baby, and I spent the first 6 or 7 years of my life there. My father always knew that in East Turkistan we would not have proper Islamic education or the right thought or speech. But what the last straw for him was in 2009, during the Uyghur Massacre, we were in Urumqi, in our apartment building, and there was a lot of noise coming from outside. And we were really little, me and my siblings, so we were scared. And we went out to the balcony to see what was going on, and we were faced with a horrific scene of just people screaming, running around, and Chinese people with like shovels and axes and knives in their hands, just everywhere.
What was the reason?
It was supposed to be a peaceful protest, turned violent with the intrusion of Chinese army and Chinese citizens because 26th of June, there's a toy factory. A fight breaks down between the Chinese workers and Uyghur workers because a few Chinese men have Uyghur girls that were also working in that factory. These Uyghur men and women are, by the way, transferred forcibly from Kashgar to work in labor in these factories, so they're not willingly there. So a fight breaks down and 2 Uyghur men were brutally murdered by these Chinese workers. And when the parents, they hear about this, they are asking the government for information. They want to know what happened to their son, who killed them, what's going on. And when the government fails to give them a proper answer or take action, people all around different parts of East Turkestan start to protest. It's a peaceful protest, they just want answers, but it turned violent again with the involvement of the military, the Chinese military and the Chinese people, and turned into just thousands of men and women being murdered. Like, there are witnesses of streets turning red because of the blood. There are even witnesses of people in the military scooping up the bodies on the streets to try to erase any evidence. When my dad saw that, he realized, yeah, we're not staying here. This is not possible. We're not safe here. We're not going to have freedom of thought, freedom of speech, or freedom to practice any form of religion or culture. So that's when he decided, I'm going to raise my kids somewhere else, and we moved to Egypt.
Do you remember anything else when you were there? You were a child.
I, as a child, felt the fear my parents felt because they couldn't talk about everything freely. On the streets, you couldn't really talk about religion or culture freely. It was also parents were scared to tell their kids about their heritage and their identity. If they accidentally, like, on the street slip their mouth and say, "Oh, I'm Uyghur, I have my own flag," it's going to get them in danger. So these things were not taught freely. That's what I remember. He didn't want to put us in the Chinese education system, so he would send us to like Uyghur kindergartens. We were really far away from that Chinese culture, thanks to him.
Can you tell us about the assimilation system in China? We heard it's pretty strict system.
So there's a word called Sinzation, which means Chinesifying culture and language. So in the name of cultural brotherhood and togetherness, China has forced schools and other educational places to teach in Chinese. so Uyghurs and Chinese people can learn each other's language and be friends and live in unity. But of course, this is just an excuse to try to assimilate us and try to wipe our language. No school taught in Uyghurcha. Chinese media has their own version of everything. So they have their own version of Google, WhatsApp, Instagram, which is really convenient if you're trying to hide a genocide from the whole world. It's convenient because you can filter and censor what information you're giving the people and what kind of information they're looking up. You can't be sitting in East Turkistan and searching up East Turkistan flag. You won't get any results because it's filtered, it's censored, so you don't see those kind of stuff. My mom used to tell me it's not allowed to fast in Ramadan or pray. So she would pray secretly at her dorm. She used to stay at a dorm. And during Ramadan, they couldn't cook food, like they couldn't go to the kitchen and cook because if the lights are on, they're gonna get suspicious. What are these girls doing? You're not allowed to fast. It's going to get them in danger. So they would cook their food at night. They would hide it from everyone else. And in the morning, they would warm it up with like warm water or in the room, just any sort of heat they could find. They would warm their food and then they would fast. There's a lot of videos circulating on the internet, Uyghur students in colleges getting beat up by their teacher and the whole class just watching and laughing. These kind of stuff are unfortunately normal. They don't feel any remorse and they feel they're doing right. If you're not one of them, then you don't mean anything to them.
Do you have any first-degree relatives in East Turkestan? Can you get news from them?
From my father's side of the family, we don't have a lot of contact because my grandma, she was taken into interrogation by some police officers and they made her sign a contract that said either you're going to cut ties with your family, your son completely, or we're going to take you in. So of course she agreed and she has cut ties with us and I don't blame her. I mean, I completely understand. But my mother's side of the family, we do have a little bit of contact. We chat, sometimes FaceTime through WeChat. It doesn't last long. It lasts like 30 minutes and then after 15 minutes we'll call again and talk for 30 minutes because if it lasts too long, it might get suspicious. When we do speak, we use code names for each other. We don't use our real names, just in case not to put anyone in danger. And I don't know most of my family members' names or faces because I haven't seen them. I left at a young age and I mean, I have cousins. I know I do, but I don't know how many. I don't know what they're doing. I haven't had the chance to talk to them. I don't know what their interests are. This Chinese government has taken everything away from me, even the right to have a relationship with my cousins, my family. But yes, I do have first-degree relatives in East Turkestan.
How do your mom and dad feel about this? I mean, they had to leave their whole past behind there.
My father, he was just like a mountain in our family and everyone was leaning on him and he knew this. You know, both of them were struggling at the same time, but they were trying to keep it a secret from us so it didn't affect us. So I remember a lot of nights where my mom would cry herself to sleep. She would be crying at night. For me, my grandma, of course I love her, but she's my grandma. To my mom, she's a mother. And my uncles and my aunts are her siblings, and I'm sure she misses them more than I ever will. They can't go back to the place they called home. I've seen my mom cry herself to sleep a lot of nights because she fears not being able to hear her mother's voice again, face to face, hug her or hold her.
She can't hug her.
Yes, and she's sick and, you know, she's aging day by day. She's getting sicker every day and she's not getting better, and it just kills me to know that my grandma might pass away without ever seeing her having a conversation with her grandchildren or her daughter. I think it's harder on our parents more than it is to us because they have to leave everything behind. We didn't have a lot of experience. Of course we feel pain, of course we miss our country, but their childhood, their youth their whole entire family is there. And it's just every time we FaceTime, my grandma, she gets sicker each day and I can see the pain in my mother's eyes. I don't want to say accepting, but realizing that one day she might have to get the news of her mother passing away. And one day she cried to me and she said, "There's so much I wanted to tell my mom. There's so much you learn from your mother. There's not an age where you stop being a daughter or an age where you don't need your mother anymore. You always need your mother." And it's just heartbreaking to see my mom and my dad. My dad has not heard his mother's voice in 9 years because we don't have contact with my father's side of the family. And seeing the helplessness of my parents and them realizing they're never going to see their parents again is heartbreaking.
Do you remember any memories with her?
My grandma is the funniest, strongest person ever. She's so funny. Even at her age and her sickness and illness, she tries to make us laugh with her jokes when we call. And yeah, I miss her a lot. So at our village, there was the little candy store, but my mom would get mad at me if I ate too much candy. So I would go to my grandma and I would tell her to give me some cash so me and my sisters could buy snacks. And in Uyghur houses, there's usually a big place that's off the ground. It's high above, and people sleep there or they eat there. It's just used for everything. It's called spa. It's higher than like the stepping ground. And she was a very busy woman. She knew everyone in village and everyone knew her. She was very giving. Like if you went over to her house and you said, "Oh, I really like this cup. It's yours." She would give it to you. That's the kind of woman she was.
This video was made to be the voice for a people who have been silenced. What they've gone through is a truth that the world just can't ignore. At Eternal Passenger, we will share these truths with over 40 countries through our English channel. Please share this message to help more people hear their voice. Remember, nothing you do for our brothers and sisters is ever too small. One share can awaken thousands. Is there someone looking after your grandmother there?
My aunt is with her, but it's not enough for her. She misses us, and she did actually once get the chance to come here. She wants to die and be buried in her homeland, so she didn't come. It's unimaginable. I mean, I can't imagine having to see my mother sick and not being there for her. And I don't ever want to accept the fact that someday she might die. I was not there for her burial, at least. It's just my mom is one of the most bravest women I know. She was there for my father. They supported each other, and we had to build a life completely differently from ground zero. So my parents are the strongest people I know, and I think this whole situation affects them more than it does us. Also, another story my mom mentioned is there was a time in Chinese history called the Cultural Revolution. During this revolution, Chinese people from all around the nations were transferred to East Turkistan soil so they can farm produce, and this produce, also Uyghurs and Chinese working together, this produce would go to the government. They were forced to go work on these fields. They got nothing in return. All the money, all the produce, it goes to the government. And every month, every person gets amount of wheat and corn flour. So it's like 7.5 grams of wheat and 5 grams of corn flour, and that's all you eat. No meat, no nothing. One day, when they were coming from work from the fields, they run each other on the street. And then my maternal grandfather invites my paternal grandfather over for dinner. When they come home, my grandma, she has a baby in the crib, and she sees that he has a guest. And she's calm, she's collected. She doesn't act like there's no food. She's very calm. She says, "Okay, I'll prepare you guys something to eat." In their little house that they were living in, on the roof, I guess to prevent rain, they had like the rice plant, and like wheat straws were on the roof. She climbs the roof, takes like 15 minutes picking the rice plants, hoping she finds rice. She manages to get like a little bowl of rice. She cooks that. She serves it to them. This is just one example of that's our women, that's our mothers, that's the kind of women, that's the kind of resistance we have.
Do you have any relatives in prison? If so, why are they imprisoned?
Some of them have been arrested and released. Some of them are still arrested. Again, ranging from 8 years to 24 years. And their crime, again, like I mentioned, is just education, trying to get education. From my father's side, my uncle was sentenced to 18 years in prison. His son sentenced to 18 years, and his father-in-law 24 years, all because they did business abroad, they have family abroad, and they spread education. We are a family of scholars, so we have a lot of scholars in our family, and we value education a lot as a family. So, and that's China's worst fear. They don't want people getting educated, because when you get educated, you begin to take action. You begin to realize, wait, this is wrong. This is not okay. When you have education, you want to spread it. use your voice. And when you live in a country where your voice is seen as a threat, then it's a threat to China itself. So they don't want anyone getting educated. So if you traveled abroad, whether it's work, whether or it's for studying, that's the biggest crime. So 24 years, just for having. Also, his business partners are also in prison. Anyone related to him or my dad are in danger. And in these camps and prisons, men and women are given drugs or injections. We don't know what they are. We know that some of the injections have infertilized women. This is to stop the population, to stop the overpopulation, so we don't expand more. And also, men. You've probably heard stories of people being released from these camps and just suddenly dying 1 week later or a month later. We have a lot of friends that have experienced like their parents being released or their grandparents. And yesterday, actually, one of my friends in Germany lost her grandmother. She was a 65-year-old woman. She was released from the camps, and a few weeks later, she passed away. So we don't know what they're forcing us to take drugs. So yes, those are my relatives in those camps.
What do they do to them in the concentration camps or in prison?
Prisons and concentration camps, or as they call it, re-education camps. In these re-education camps, they are brainwashed to forgetting their identity. Imagine just sitting there in a day, just getting screamed at like Chinese propaganda, Chinese teachings every single day. It messes with your mind. So these people, when they are released from these camps, they're usually not mentally stable. They're not okay, and they've lost a lot of weight because they're not healthy. They're not given proper food. But what they're given is just like there's Chinese buns, the white, just they have these kind of buns that has nothing, no meat, nothing inside, just white plain bread. That's what they're eating. They're malnourished, and malnourishment also affects your mental state. So people in these concentration camps are, even if they survive and are released, like majority of them pass away really soon. Torture is happening in both sides, prison and concentration camps, but there is also a version of concentration camps for children. So these are children whose parents are imprisoned or in camps, and they're orphaned. They don't have anyone to look after them. These can be as young as infants, babies, to maybe like teenagers, and they don't have any parents, so they take them to these orphanages, mini version of a concentration camp. They give them a Chinese name. They tell them, this is your name, you're Chinese. They speak Chinese only. And I mean, these are young kids. So if they don't have parents to control them, they're going to believe them. So they grow up as Chinese people. They grow up knowing, believing, thinking they're Chinese, with Chinese ideology, Chinese beliefs, and Chinese culture. So in terms of culture and experiences they're having in these camps, so as women, of course, it's just the hardest torture hearing for me is the rape of these women by multiple Chinese men in a single day. You know, your living conditions really affect your mental state. When you're living in a cell with 60 other women, you have no privacy. It's just one single bathroom. You don't have a comfortable place to sleep in. That just already it affects you mentally, it weakens you, and it drives you insane. And when you're getting raped every day, multiple times, even having to carry their children, sometimes these women get pregnant by these Chinese soldiers, and it's horrifying. It's unimaginable having to carry your enemy's child, especially conceived through. It's something I can't even begin to fathom. Also, Chinese people are known for their extreme methods, like sleep deprivation, just keeping you awake for days and days, and just asking you questions, interrogating you. Also, electrocution is also one of them.
What kind of challenges do Uyghurs face while trying to practice their religion?
You know, during the rule of communism, a lot of our traditions have been wiped. And my mom, when she did find Islam, but she would always pray. Praying was a big part of her life. It was easier for her in the village because, you know, you're not under constant surveillance. There's not a lot of police officers watching you. It was safer for her to pray there. But when she went to Urumqi for education, college, praying was not allowed, or fasting was not allowed. So she would do everything in secret. And I mentioned my experiences with, the Chinese passport. I had to for my photo to be accepted on the passport, I had to take my hijab off. Imagine going to a photographer, a male photographer. He's going to take your ID photo, but you have to take your hijab in front of him because your country's passport that represents you does not allow you to have a hijab on in your picture. That's degrading and that's inhumane. I learned how to read the Qur'an from my aunt. She used to teach Qur'an, just not just to me. She had other girls staying at her house. But later when I returned, I heard that she was doing it in secret. Girls, like, they would come from like back doors so the police officer would not see them. There's a lot of stories from my friends also of their aunts or uncles teaching Islamic Qur'an or giving Islamic inspirational speeches done in secret. So they would either do it at night, at dark, or maybe they would come really early in the morning so no one would see them, and then leave like really late at night. And they would not leave all at the same time, so just one by one. So if a group of people leave a house, it gets suspicious. It's dangerous. It can harm the person that's teaching. It can harm the families of the girls. So yes, a lot of practices were done in secret.
You moved from East Turkistan to Egypt and then Turkey. Why?
The Chinese government demands or asks the Egyptian government to deport any Uyghurs that were living in Egypt, because back then there were a lot of Uyghur students in Egypt. People went there for education, again, for religious freedom, getting education. So at that time there were a lot of Uyghur people and students living there. We were one of them. And the army was involved in this. So late at night, we would hear stories of like people eating at restaurants and suddenly just an army of soldiers coming in and arresting them, or even arresting them at night when they're sleeping at their homes. That year, we were actually not planning on going. We were planning on staying and maybe go the next year. We were not feeling it. And my dad, he didn't have a good feeling about it. He said he didn't, he just felt uneasy and said maybe we should go this year. So we pack up enough for a vacation. We just have one luggage each, and we pack up, we board the train, we land, and 1 week later, we get a call from our landlord, and he's panicked, he's scared. He says, "What's going on? They're armed in your house. They're looking for you. They were looking everywhere." I told them you left. I didn't know where you went, but what is happening? We were lucky. We get to escape, and when we came here, we had nothing. All our life is in Egypt. All our belongings, everything we own. We had to start life anew from here. So when we came here, my dad, he was at an age where he should be retiring. At the age that he should be retiring and maybe having a peaceful life towards the end of his life, he had to rebuild life for us from zero. I mean, you're the man of the house, you should have a strong image when you see your father, but seeing him like down like that and having to work under other people and everything just cut off in just one night, it's unimaginable. I mean, he worked his whole life for this.
If you had the chance to reunite with them, what would you want to say to them?
I wouldn't probably want to speak. I just want to give them a long hug. I would probably apologize for not doing enough. I wish I could do more.
If our Prophet, peace be upon him, entered the door right now, what would you like to say to him?
I would probably remind him first an incident with one of his sahabas, Ammar ibn Yasir. He witnesses his mother's stomach being cut open in front of him. He also witnesses his dad's eyes, his father's eyes, getting carved out in front of him. They would be stuck to a pole. They would be tied to a pole, and then they would have to witness their loved ones or their parents getting tortured or murdered in front of them to try and revert them from their beliefs and what the Prophet is saying. The first time when his mother's stomach is cut open, they ask him to badmouth the Prophet and ask him to deny that Islam is a religion. So in the first time he says, "No, I won't do it." The second time, when his father's eyes are carved out in front of him, he says, "No, again, I won't do it." And each time, every day, the Prophet would go to these areas where this were happening, and he would talk to his Sahaba and he would say, "Have patience." And the third day, when he is the one being tortured, this time they're torturing him, and they tell him to again badmouth the Prophet, curse him, and tell him for him to admit that Islam is not the truth, that what the Prophet is spreading is lies. And at the third day, when he cannot bear the torture any longer, he says, yes, his words are lies and Islam is not the truth. But as he's saying this, he's crying, he's bawling, like crying heavily. After that, they release him. They get what they want, so they release him. He runs to the Prophet. He goes, "Ya Rasulullah, I did what they asked. I failed you. I'm sorry." And he's crying. So the Prophet, he just sits. He's quiet, and he says, "Did you mean any of what you said?" And he says, "No, Ya Rasulullah. The words didn't even cross my throat." He says, "I'm only human. I'm only human, and I couldn't bear it any longer. Forgive me." The Prophet says, he looks at him and he says, "In order to protect yourself, and you have said something that will badmouth religion or Islam, but you didn't mean it at heart, it's okay." And at that time, an ayah is sent to him in his name. An ayah is sent down. When I think of that incident, we're all human. it gets unbearable sometimes. So I would remind him of this incident and tell him that I'm only human and I get tired, and if I can't do more to help, please forgive me. And the most I can do, and I would ask him for forgiveness and maybe give shafa'a to my parents because they did their best and they're struggling more than I am. So that's probably what I would say.
If you had the chance to speak to all Uyghurs, how would you motivate them?
I would tell them to not be discouraged and have faith and patience because a lot of people care about this cause, East Turkistan cause, and a lot of people are talking about it. And channels like this and young people especially are trying their best to make their voice heard. So don't be discouraged because we're doing everything we can.
If you had the chance to address the whole world, what would you say to people about East Turkestan?
So the East Turkestan genocide, the past 10 years or 8 years, it has gotten really strict. But this has been going on for 70 years. This has been going on for a really long time. It's just now more people are talking about it because it has started becoming systemized. So people like you with these YouTube channels and other creators, if they can speak up about this, that's the only thing we can do, unfortunately, now. But that's the best thing we can also do, raising awareness and keeping us in your prayers, and just don't forget us and don't normalize what is happening. That's what I would say.
Sister Sekine, thank you so much for your attendance. It was such a pleasure to meet you. Inshallah, this video will help raise the voices of our sisters and brothers in East Turkestan.
Inshallah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me a platform to speak up about my people and giving me a voice. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. Today I was here with Eternal Passenger, sharing my experiences as an Uyghur living abroad and also my things I have witnessed in East Turkestan. To help the making of more videos like this, please don't forget to support the channel, like, subscribe, and comment, and don't forget to share so this reaches more people and you can help more Uyghurs use their voice.